Yeah, as a favorite YouTuber of mine likes to say, there are levels to this thing. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love. We are here on a Monday night at 6 o'clock Eastern Time as part of our new live programming schedule launch. Hope you caught that. We posted that on the community page just yesterday, coming out of the weekend on Super Bowl Sunday. That this is the off-season schedule that we've committed to as best we can here going forward until the 2021 season, which includes a Monday appearance with Pigskin P, College Football Coast to Coast at noon. This call-in show at 6 o'clock Monday night. We'll be back on Tuesday at noon Eastern Time, talking college football with you right back here for a call-in show. And then 6 o'clock on Tuesday night, we talk Ohio State football over on the Ohio State channel live. Wednesday, we're jam-packed with a 2 o'clock, a 6 o'clock, and an 8 o'clock with Ohio State, Florida State, and then the call-in show at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Wednesday night. And then Thursday and Friday, we've got a call-in show on the SEC channel, Thursday night at 6, and then 6 o'clock Eastern Time, right back here on Friday. I want to welcome everybody in the chat. Good to see all of you there. And I put the title of this particular call-in show just College Football Tiers. College Football Tiers. I saw an interesting article on ESPN about a week ago where all the 130 college football teams were put into categories for 2021. So I'm going to run that down, see if you guys agree and what you believe the categories or the tiers, the levels of the college football programs in 2021 are, if they're changing, if they're staying the same. We know that those three seem to be right there in category number one, but who's got the potential to jump up, who's declining, who is moving up and down the ladder in college football. We've got many of these represented here on the helmet shelf. Our number is 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. I will get that posted here in just a few minutes. I'll let you know that I actually ordered something from Amazon just a few minutes ago. I got a Rodecaster audio board that's coming my way. So I used the Amazon link. I practice what I preach. I use the Amazon link to order the Rodecaster and get ourselves set for better audio here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. All right. Mr. Phil B. Florida State will be a top-tier team in 21 because of Mackenzie Milton. Top-tier Florida State. Top-tier Mackenzie Milton. I sure hope Mackenzie Milton can stay healthy in 2021. It would be great to see him play a full college football season. What a comeback he is making and is in the process of. UCF was in line to put him on the field in one of the last games of the season, but didn't get into a position in which they could put him on the field. But I think everybody's rooting for Mackenzie Milton. I got to think, regardless of who you root for, that, he's a class act. He's really just good for that Florida State football program, regardless of how many touchdowns he's able to throw, regardless of the impact on the field, which I think is going to be substantial. I know is going to be substantial if he stays healthy. And even if he doesn't stay healthy, he's just an addition to the locker room. The knowledge that he's going to pass on to the rest of those quarterbacks in that quarterback room, the knowledge, the leadership capabilities, the advice. Good to see 11YPE Central. The Rod Farva, things won't change under Mackenzie Milton overnight. Yes, will he be the same? Had the huge 2017 and 2018. It was 2018 when he got hurt. Had the big 2017. Got David in the live chat as well. And David provides us, no, Rod the Farver provides us with our trivia of the night. Muggsy Bogues played minor league baseball. I didn't know that. Muggsy Bogues at 5'3". There's some news coming in from Rod Farva. Matt Campbell given an 8-year extension with Iowa State. How much does that really mean? I think that's more a move to show confidence, to show that Iowa State wants him around. If he wasn't that secure or didn't know that already, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to stay at Iowa State for the next 8 years, but it shows that that they've got their claws in him a little bit further. And that for the time being, he feels good about his position at Iowa State. Nobody's been able to pluck him out of there. Any other comments of note before we start to go through these tiers in college football? Thank you, SEC Dog. Tomorrow morning, bright and early, the first of our video series on scheduling fixes. I'm excited about this. To be released this morning. Coming up Tuesday morning, 5 a.m. Eastern time is going to be our scheduling fix. We're going to go conference by conference and fix the schedules. The schedules are a mess. They're unfair. They're unbalanced. Just think of it this way. Keep this in mind. Let's say you love the SEC, you watch the SEC, and regardless of whether you care about the SEC, this is just downright ridiculous that in the next 60 years, let's say the scheduling doesn't change in the SEC. They continue to do what they're doing, and they don't change the format of scheduling and the approach in the SEC. Over the next 60 years, Ole Miss and Vandy will play 60 times, and Mississippi State and Kentucky will play 60 times. And Texas A&M and South Carolina, that great rivalry, Texas A&M and South Carolina will play 60 times in the next 60 years. Alabama and Georgia, Auburn and Florida, some really good matchups like that will play 10 times. 10 times. This wasn't really well thought out when they launched this, both in the ACC and the SEC. Those are the two culprits in all this. They've got the worst scheduling by far. The other ones could use a tweak, but it's really the ACC and the SEC that are the worst. Did they really think that through? That there would be teams that have no connection, Ole Miss and Vandy and Mississippi State and Kentucky, South Carolina and Texas A&M that have no connection, that they're going to play every year. So if you look over the next 60 years, they're going to play every year, 60 years, 60 times. And then matchups like Alabama and Georgia, Florida, Auburn, we could go on. Georgia, Texas A&M, they're going to play 10 times. They're going to play some matchups 6 times more than others. Okay. So, yeah, coming up tomorrow at noon Eastern time, we've got a live show right here talking college football with you. At 3:15 Eastern time, I've got my weekly record with Steve Dace from Michigan Podcast, and he typically releases that a little bit later on Tuesday, and then back here at noon at 6 o'clock Eastern time, talking Ohio State football on the Ohio State channel. Joseph, Mark does not stop like Tommy Brady. Did you hear the noon show? Is that what you heard, Joseph? Is that what you caught? Got Ronan on the line. Yeah, Joseph, who thinks Penn State will beat the Buckeyes this year. Got a possible issue between Ronan and Phil B here. They would certainly help with this whole COVID thing. Maybe Phil's on something, according to Ronan. Mike Myrek, what's up, Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Go Noles. The Rod Favre. Mark, I didn't look at the entire Big Ten schedule, but how many Friday games are there? I only saw one, which I think was Nebraska-Iowa. Will the Big Ten get rid of the bad idea of Friday games? Okay, Friday games. We've got Ohio State and Minnesota playing on a Thursday. We've got, I believe, that first week of the season, the Nebraska-Illinois game is either a Thursday or a Friday because they're playing overseas. At least that's the way it's scheduled now, unless they have to make a decision to pull it back and play it in the States. But Nebraska-Illinois play in Ireland. I think that's a Thursday. Maybe it's a Friday. And then Ohio State was Minnesota. That's a Thursday game, week 1. Nebraska and Iowa is not the last game of the season as it typically is. It is going to be Iowa, Wisconsin on the last weekend of the season, and it's going to be Nebraska and it must be Nebraska, Minnesota on the final weekend of the season. I don't know why the Big Ten switched that up. They had pitted Nebraska and Iowa ever since Nebraska joined the Big Ten as rivals to play on Black Friday, and now they've switched that up starting this season. We went through the Big Ten schedule during a live stream when the re-release came of the Big Ten schedule last Friday, and I went through the Big Ten schedule last Friday. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. Where's Mark up here?
Hey.
What is the topic of the video today? It says TIERS, but I missed your introduction. What do you want to hear from people?
Because of my laptop situation, I can't really specifically go through it right this second without my phone. But basically, I came across an article on ESPN in which we're always talking about what teams are on what level, what teams are on what tiers, and who's on the top tier, the second tier, et cetera, et cetera. On ESPN, they took all 130 teams and put them in tiers. They came up with 10 tiers, and they placed them in tiers. And I was going to go through to get us started on that conversation.
They got 10 separate tiers. That's I probably wouldn't separate it out like that. I'd probably make 5 or 6. So are you just wanting to hear from where people think certain teams should be? Or?
Yeah, that's the general take on it.
All right. So 2 or so years ago, I saw a similar thing done or proposed on the Paul Feinbaum show, and they were saying there were 5 tiers. From the top down was contenders to relevant, semi-relevant, downhill, and the abyss.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you need to add a 6th tier to that, which is just Alabama. But a lot of people said I want to argue with you, but I can't.
So this was after this season?
It was what?
This was after this season?
No, this was about two or so years ago.
Yeah.
It made me think of it when I saw the title of your video.
Well, I think you're in the best position to say that right now versus even 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, you also had one called, you had a show called Who Gets Voted Off the Island.
Yes. Yeah.
I was watching the replay of that because I wasn't there live, but I was kind of wish I was there because I would have called or made at least a troll comment. Amongst the other teams I want voted off, like I want Vanderbilt voted off the island into the group of 5 Ocean. I want Rutgers voted off the island, Kansas off the island. I actually think Alabama needs to be voted off the island too. Instead of going to group of 5, they just need to be promoted to NFL. That'll make college football more interesting.
What do you think what would happen if Alabama, this past Alabama team, would go play an NFL schedule?
You're asking the worst possible person for that because every single person listening or who will listen, like my opinion is already like null and void because it's coming from an Alabama fan. But okay, so I'm going to cite this. I've discussed this plenty of times. I don't have all the data in front of me right now. I wish I did, but just from the top of my head, there used to be a long time ago. They used to have the Super Bowl play college all-stars.
Yes.
The Super Bowl winner play college all-stars, and believe it or not, the college boys did win 9 times. Now, I think it was 9 out of like 40, but the point is they won. It wasn't impossible. What we're looking at here is a lot of people 5 years ago would always bring up, what if Alabama played the Browns? And now the popular one is, what if Alabama played Jacksonville? The Jags. And I make a comparison of that, and then I say, we're talking about a cohesive team, a team that has worked together for years. In this case, Alabama's receivers been together there all 4 years. Najee Harris been there a long time. They have an NFL offensive line. I mean, they just do.
Mm-hmm.
All of these receivers and all their offensive powers are all NFL caliber players, pretty much, with the exception of 1 or 2. You have a cohesive team, not an all-star team, which means they're more in sync with each other, which means
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to perform better. Like this year's Alabama team, I think would be an all-star college fit team that practiced for 2 weeks. I mean, I just think they would, just because they are just way more in sync. They know each other. You're talking about, so in my opinion, that's better category than what used to happen. And instead of the Super Bowl champ, you're talking about an NFL doormat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're not talking about the best of the best. You're literally talking about the other side, the worst. If Alabama played Jacksonville 10 times, I think they would probably lose 8 or 9 times. But I don't think it's beyond the realm that they would squeak out 1 or 2 wins. If they played an NFL schedule, well, how many NFL games are there, by the way? I don't even know.
16.
In a regular season. Is it how many?
16.
16. Okay, I think they might find 1 or 2 wins. This year's Alabama team. I don't think that they're just going to lose 50-0 like everyone says. Again, it's coming from an Alabama fan, but I mean, my God, just look at the talent. If people want to say, well, these are professionals, like most of those guys playing right now on that Alabama team are the same kind of caliber athletes you're going to find in the NFL. Someone tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong.
I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that they could win 1 or 2.
Yeah.
If they had the perfect game plan.
Yeah. Well, I have been one of those that for a long, long time has always said that the worst NFL team would crush the best college team. And I've given a lot of reasons why. For one thing, I don't know that we can necessarily take the college players, and we need to understand that they're not the player that they're going to be 3 years down the line.
Mm-hmm.
That once they get into an NFL program, that they've just become better football players. They're playing against the best. They're, for as high level as Alabama is, that they're playing just at a higher level with more focus given to their craft and strength and conditioning and just everything. They become grown men, even more so a couple of years later across the board.
Which is why, I mean, I think they would lose most of the games, and I think they'd lose most of them, getting trounced. But I don't think it's, again, I don't think it's inconceivable that they couldn't find a way to win one or two. Well, I know I'm probably going to get blasted for even saying that, but
I don't think
I'm trying
you
to
will.
be as fair as I can here.
I don't think you will. And again, I got to say that traditionally, I thought at the end of the spectrum, but it's something we will never know. We will never find out. We will never know. Even I don't know the history of, besides just seeing scores, and I actually watched a handful of plays at one of the games you're talking about not that long ago. In the last couple of weeks, I watched one of those games on YouTube. I watched, a couple drives of the All-Stars from college taking on a Super Bowl champ. And I don't know how those games were played. It was played in July, for one thing. And I just don't know how seriously it was taken. I don't know.
Right. Well, unfortunately, that's never something you can actually quantify. But anyway, on to the topic of your video. I mean, the top tier is pretty obvious. The question I think is more interesting is, do you think it's fair to separate teams like Georgia and Oklahoma out of the top tier? Do you think Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson are clearly just separated themselves? Or do you think Georgia should be included because they are as talented, or in some cases more talented than those teams, just for that alone?
Well, I think part of the equation that has to be determined, and there's no perfect science to it, is how much are you talking about right this second based on what we just saw played in 2021 and the personnel gains and losses for each program versus how far do we go back into the past to credit or penalize a team. Because we'll start this discussion, and I'm sure you'll bring up the past. Of course, I'll bring up the past. That's all we've got to go on, whether that's this past season or people will chime in, and there'll be people that'll go back 10 years to cite information and context, or go back 3 years or 4 years. So I think all of it's relevant to discuss and debate. There's no perfect formula to this. I think Georgia's ahead of Oklahoma. Oklahoma's going to have to show me more before I'm going to elevate them beyond Georgia, because I think Georgia has better talent. They've performed better in a better conference. And when I say they've performed better against elite competition than Oklahoma has. They've won a playoff game. Of course, that was against Oklahoma, and then they came within a whisker of winning a national championship, where Oklahoma hasn't come anywhere close to winning a national championship. That Georgia basically showed, at least that particular season, that except for the final result, the final score of the game, that they were just as good as the national champion. They could have been the national champion.
Right. Which is what makes that question, at least in my eyes, interesting. When we start talking about tiers, I don't think that's something that it should be juggling around every single year. So I'm not basing everything just off last year. If you kind of catch what I'm meaning,
Absolutely.
I think you should go back. I don't think there's a definite number. I don't want people to come on here and say, "Well, stop at 2016." Something. Okay, so we're not including the championship Alabama won the previous year. So that's kind of silly. It's like when people say go back to after 1992 going forward, the best team since then. I'm like, so we cannot count Alabama's championship. So that's what I don't get when people do that. So I'm not trying to go back a specific number of years. Just in the recent history is all I'm kind of trying to get at. I'm one of those people that I think there should be some sort of requirement to get into the elite tier. Georgia is as talented. This year they were technically the most talented team in the country. They are up there with the big three. And so I'm more than willing to recognize that. I'm willing to recognize that they were at least as good, as Alabama in 17. But to me, it's like you got to do it once. You got to at least win the championship once before you can call yourself elite. You kind of get what I'm saying. It kind of just rings really hollow when you're when you're trying to talk like the big boys, and they're like, "Well, where's your rings? Your hand's empty." Actually, perfect metaphor right here. You ever see the movie Happy Gilmore?
Yes.
Okay, you remember in the beginning where after he won that first thing, so he gets on the pro tour, and Shooter McGavin is standing there with all those other golfers, and they're all wearing those gold jackets. And Happy Gilmore goes up and he looks at Shooter. He's like, "Well, where's yours?" That's Georgia. They're trying to stand with everyone, with Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama. But it's like, where's your ring? Where's your championship? Hey, what are you doing here? You don't look like the other guys.
Yeah, it's a point well taken. It's a point well taken. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand it. We've got an LSU team that won a national championship 2 years ago, but every other year since 2011's lost at least 3 games. So, but they got
right.
They achieved the goal the one time at least.
I don't mean that it automatically puts you in the elite tier. I'm just saying it's a requirement. LSU won the championship, and they then became the worst defending champion to ever exist. And like you said, every year prior to that, they lost 3 games or more.
Yeah.
So definitely not in the elite tier. They're a really shining spot in whichever tier you think they belong in. But just having that championship doesn't guarantee you to get into the top one. But to me, personally, at least, it is a requirement.
So it sounds like either Alabama's in its own class, and then maybe Ohio State and Clemson would be in their own class below that, or the 3 are in their own class. We can go back and forth on that. But we pretty much have to go back to 2013 would be the last time anybody else won a national championship, and that would be Florida State. They're certainly not elite. Then if you go back to 2010 would be the next time, and that would be Auburn. Well, they're certainly not elite. So under your guidelines, Oklahoma and Georgia are eliminated, and it's either Alabama by themselves, as you stated off the top, and then the other 2, Clemson, Ohio State, are on their own tier, or they're all 3 together. Regardless, whichever it is, there's nobody else to discuss on the first tier.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And I think that's what's being played out. I think Georgia and Oklahoma have an opportunity. They have a claim. They have a thin argument, but for different reasons, they fall short. And you gave the most significant one, and that's that neither has won a national championship during a reasonable amount of time in the recent past. And more so for Oklahoma, they've gotten throttled consistently.
Well, I mean, they got throttled by LSU, but the Alabama game wasn't that bad, and the Georgia game was overtime. So I don't think it's as bad as you make it sound. I don't remember how badly they lost to Clemson. I think it was a pretty marginal victory.
Yeah, it was like a 19-point game. They lost like 41-20 or 40-21 or something like that.
Now, my question is, where are you putting like teams like Florida, A&M. Actually, that's pretty much it. Florida and A&M. Because I would put them in the third tier below Georgia and Oklahoma.
Yeah, so if, again, we'll get past the argument of Clemson, Ohio State by themselves in a second tier or with Alabama in a first tier. So the next tier, Georgia, Oklahoma. I'm trying to figure out whether Notre Dame belongs on that tier. They would be the next school I would go to, would be Notre Dame, because since 2017, they've been playing consistently in the top 10 with 2 playoff appearances. Texas A&M just has this one season, this one shortened season to have any claim of doing any. Now, the future looks bright, and there's hope, and there's recruiting prowess. But Texas A&M has one season.
That's true, yeah. Just like LSU did.
Yeah, and they didn't win the national championship. And even that season it was a good season. I don't think their season was anything remarkable.
No, yeah, you're right.
They beat Florida.
So did LSU.
Yeah, so did LSU. So did all sorts of teams once we got to the end of the season. But Texas A&M, what was their second best win? Their second best win was Auburn. Well, they beat North Carolina in a bowl game. A compromised North Carolina team.
You're gonna upset the Maggie fans by saying that.
Yeah, they need to prove more. They haven't done much. They've had one good season. They went 7-5 the year before.
All right, so let's see if I can kind of do this. Just to make it really quick. To me, the fact that everyone keeps wanting to say that Alabama's ruining the sport, they're not really saying Ohio State and Clemson are ruining the sport. They're saying Alabama's ruining the sport.
Yep.
So the fact that they're saying that, to me, is justification that Alabama's in its own tier. So I'm not trying to be a homer. I mean, that's the way it is. They've won literally in the last 12 years, Alabama versus America out there tied. So I'm just going to right now put Alabama at the top of the pyramid by themselves. Ohio State and Clemson on the next tier. I'm going to go ahead and in the third tier, I think LSU's national championship, given just how good that team was, I really kind of feel bad and feel almost hurting doing this, given the atrocious season they just had. But I'm going to say LSU is hanging on to the third tier with Florida and Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame is quite at Georgia or Oklahoma's level.
Well, I think you're down to a fourth tier. Your number one tier is Alabama. Your 2 tier is
you're right.
Ohio State, Clemson. Okay.
Yeah, fourth. Yeah.
Okay, your fourth tier.
Yeah,
okay.
So fourth tier, yeah, it's it is. Let's see, we had Georgia and Oklahoma up there, and LSU hanging on to that one. So in the fourth tier, Notre Dame, Florida. I'm trying to think of any. I'm trying to go around the conferences, man. But there's maybe North Carolina. They've been coming on pretty strong these last 2 years.
Oregon.
So I don't think once you get down to fourth and fifth and stuff, you don't have to have a long history of proving it. So yeah, Oregon, North Carolina. I think they would have a good argument for the fourth tier.
You understand reasonable gump. North Carolina went 7-6 the year before last. That's a pretty thin resume. To be in that category.
When you put it that way.
7-6.
I'm trying to find teams that are not. I'm trying to name non-SEC teams, and it's getting difficult.
I think Iowa's stronger than North Carolina. And again, if somebody's going to challenge me, I'm not talking about right this second that Iowa would beat North Carolina, but I'm just, to your point, I need to see consistency for a little length of time, some length of time. Did you get to around to Penn State?
Yeah, I said Penn State
Oh,
for
okay.
the fourth tier.
Right.
What about Texas? Do you think they're in there?
No.
You don't think they're in the fourth tier?
No, they're not Penn State.
Okay.
Penn State won the Big Ten championship and went to the Rose Bowl in 16. They won the Fiesta Bowl, finished in the top 10 in 17. They finished in the top 15 in 18. Then in 19, they won another major bowl game, Cotton Bowl, and finished in the top 10. They finished in the top 10 for the last 5 years.
Right.
Now they had a bad year this past year.
So you're thinking for teams like Texas and Texas A&M with these 7-5-ish kind of resumes, with a couple of bright spots. Texas beat Oklahoma that one year. Texas A&M beat Florida. I guess you're probably wanting to bump North Carolina down a spot too, so we'll put them together because they had a good loss, I guess, against Clemson.
Did you get around to USC?
I don't think USC is in. No, we're not that far down yet.
Really? I'm going to put USC above North Carolina and Texas.
Based on this year?
Based on recent, again, we're not drawing a line in the sand for a particular season, but
right.
And USC did have a 5-win season a couple of years ago, but I don't know. They won the Pac-12 in 2017, went to the Cotton Bowl. The year before, they won the Rose Bowl, finished in the top 5 in the country.
My memory must be failing because I thought the narrative around USC of recent history was we're trying to get Clay Helton out of here.
Yeah. Well, they've accomplished more than Texas and North Carolina in the last 5 years. Substantially more than North Carolina.
All right. Yeah, that's not unreasonable. I just have a very, very limited knowledge of what's going on the West Coast, if I had to be perfectly honest with you.
Maybe this is leading into my next video series. I'm going to go with tiers. You're on your way, Reasonable Gump, after you said that when I mentioned that the ESPN writer had 10 tiers and your eyes bugged out, you're on your way to like 20. You're on your way to all sorts of tiers. Like he had everybody in the country, 130 teams.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Although, to be honest, I was only thinking Power 5.
Yeah.
I suppose if we're doing Group of 5, you know what? I can't though. I don't know how to do it. That's the problem with the Group of 5 is you get these really good undefeated teams that didn't play any meaningful schedule. So then again, I mean, same thing can be said about Clemson most years.
Yeah, they're tough to deal with, the Group of 5, just like when you try to rank them. When I try to rank them, they're difficult to rank.
Well, I think I've embarrassed myself enough for one day. So.
No, not at all. It's a difficult exercise.
It is. Well, particularly when you're walking to the gym outside, like I am right now. I wish I had a computer in front of me so I could cheat with Google.
All right. Did you have a good workout?
I don't know. I'm on my way there.
On your way. All right. Well, you've done better than I have so far today. So, all right, sir.
Well, thankfully, all right, man. Talk to you later.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks. All right, Reasonable Gump, giving it a shot. Break down the tiers in college football. It is not an easy exercise because you can't just say 2020's the end-all, be-all. Then you got to take Penn State, Michigan, and LSU at 5-5, and you just send them, down the list to number 60 or 70. But you also can't ignore a situation like a Florida State. You can't ignore that Florida State was a top 10 team in 2016, and they haven't been anything close to that. What Georgia is versus 2017 to now going into 2021 is very similar. What Ohio State is, very similar. Clemson, very similar. Oklahoma, very similar. What Florida State is compared to 5 years ago, completely different program. On the downturn. Who's taken an upswing since then? Michigan State's a much different program today than it was 5 years ago. They were just starting to hit the cliff 5 years ago, and now we got to see what Mel Tucker has in a full season. But his first season was not a pretty one in this pandemic year. Whatever Michigan State finished, 3-5, something like that, 2-5. So we can definitely take the teams and the programs that have ascended and descended the most in the last 5 years, and Florida State's going to lead that charge down the cliff. Florida State has fallen unlike any other school in the country in the last 5 years. Can't think of anybody close to Florida State's tumble. Nobody. Because even Michigan, it's just been one season so far. 3-5, short season, whatever. They were just a 9-3 team that made a New Year's Bowl game last year. So we have to wait and see on Michigan. We have to wait and see on Penn State, and we'll see if they bounce back in 2021. But for Florida State, what's that? 4 consecutive bad seasons. 4 consecutive lousy seasons. 7-6, 5-7, 6-7, 3-6. And just not being competitive the last few years. Who did Florida State beat in going 3-6? Duke. They did somehow the miracles of miracles against North Carolina this year, and Jacksonville State. Yeah, Florida State has fallen off like no other team in the country in the last 5 years. In the last 10 years, Texas is in the front of the line. They're the worst big program. They are the program that has declined the most following the BCS championship game appearance in 2009 and then 5 wins in 2010. So they took a turn immediately. And then they had a couple decent years under Mac Brown before he hung them up in 2013. And they've been awful ever since, except for they had the one season against under Tom Herman in 2017. 10 wins, Sugar Bowl win, Big 12 championship game appearance. Yeah, if we break down tiers going all the way through, even just the Power 5, not even including the Group of 5, there are some programs that are difficult to get a handle on. Reasonable Gump, I don't think, mentioned Oklahoma State. They would start to have been in the discussion where we were right then. Oklahoma State usually gives us 8-4, 9-3. Sometimes they bump it up beyond that, but they haven't won the Big 12 since 2011. It's been 10 years now since Oklahoma State won the Big 12. TCU, what do you do with them? They've had now 3 consecutive subpar seasons, 2018, 19, and 20. They did go 6-4 this last year, but what's 6-4? What's that get you? The top 35? And they had losing records before that. But 2017, 10-3, they finished in the top 10. They won a bowl game. They went to the Big 12 championship game. And if you go back to between 2010, before they joined the Big 12, 2010, winning the Rose Bowl, having an undefeated team, and then going into that 2013, 14, 15 range, finishing in the top 10 in the nation, almost getting to a college football playoff. Baylor's all over the map, up and down. Matt Rule took them from 1 win to 6 to 11 And now who knows where they are? Who knows what Baylor football is now? What'd they go this past year? I lost track of Baylor. They go like 4-6. Baylor sounds about right. I don't know if Reasonable Gump mentioned Wisconsin. Wisconsin's got to be high. They're a top 15 program easily in the top 15. If I pursue a video on this one, I may not go with tiers. I may just rank them 1 to 130, or maybe I'll rank the. It's so difficult to rank the group of 5 against the Power 5. It's almost like at the end of the season, when you look at the top 25, whether it be mine or the AP or anybody else, I can see a correlation between 11-2 teams. You seem to have to go 11-2 if you're in the group of 5 to crack the top 25. That seems to be the dividing line. If you're 10-3 in the group of 5, there might be a few exceptions out there. Can't think of when those are. You pretty much have to go 11-2. If you're in the group of 5, you need to go 11-2 to crack the final top 25. And that final top 25 will always include some 8-5 teams. Maybe not every 8-5 team from the Power 5, but most of them. Certainly, if you go 8-5 in the SEC, you're gonna finish in the final top 25. And then I'd say 3/4 of the 8-5 teams will make it. And you see this mix of 8-5 Power 5 teams and 11-2 group of 5 teams in your final top 25. You go to any final top 25, and you'll see between 15 and 25, that's what you're going to see mixed up in those rankings. You're going to see 9-4, 8-5 Power 5 teams and 11-2 group of 5 teams. Now I'm going to have somebody that's going to write me or call me that's going to find the 1 or 2 exceptions. So I might rank the programs 1 to 64, include Notre Dame and BYU, possibly 1 through 66. I'm first going to have to find a definition. I'm going to have to create a definition that really does what a definition does, defines what I'm ranking. But that ranking would go Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, or Clemson 2, Ohio State 3. I don't know. Probably Ohio State 2, not just because of the win this season, but the should have been win last season and playing in a better conference. And I don't know who's got the brighter future. I think they're pretty much on par with each other, Ohio State and Clemson. I can't really say definitively that one has a brighter future than the other. Ohio State's off to another tremendous recruiting jump on 2022. I looked at the top 300 prospects in the nation the other day, and they've already received commitments from 5 of the top 50 players. James, good to see you, James. If you believe college football players are doing only 2 to 3 hours, you're kidding yourself. Okay, there's a conversation there when we're talking about NFL and college football and whether the best college football player or team could compete in the NFL and win games against the worst of the NFL, how much time is put in. David Greenshield, top 5. He's got Alabama 1, Clemson 2, Ohio State 3, Oklahoma 4, Georgia 5. Let the debate begin. Okay, in terms of programs, I believe I would edge Ohio State over Clemson. I believe, Oklahoma, Georgia. I believe I would take Georgia over Oklahoma. James says Georgia has a terrible culture. It's been proven. I don't know. Do we have studies out there that have measured their culture? They sign 5-star players like Ohio State and Alabama and still underachieve. Okay. All right. So Kirby Smart showed up in 2016. Can we give the man one season as a mulligan? Can we give him one season to transition? They went 8-5 and won the Liberty Bowl, beat TCU. That was their 2016 season. Okay, 2017 was the year that Jacob Eason got hurt. Jake Fromm took over in game 1 or 2, and they came that close to winning the national championship. I don't think we can overstate how close Georgia was to winning the national championship. So in my eyes, when we evaluate, so winning is winning and losing is losing. Once you win, you've won the game, whether it was 50-0 or on a field goal that bounced off the upright, it's a win. It's a win in the win column, and a loss is a loss, regardless of how it occurred. But we're evaluating. We're evaluating levels and teams, and we're evaluating programs. So it does matter to me, and I think it's an easy point to make, it does matter how you win, whether you show that you are capable of standing toe-to-toe with that other team and competing, or you're not even close to that other team. And Georgia's played Alabama 3 times since 2017, and they have shown that they belong on the same field. Clearly have shown that they belong in the same field. 2 of those games, they outplayed Alabama most of the game. And even in the most recent game, they were far inferior at quarterback, and it was still a 27-24 game, in the third quarter, and it was 27-24 with like 10 minutes left in the game. So I don't know if I can really distinguish Georgia, I should say Ohio State from Georgia since 2017. Why is Georgia being criticized so heavily here? Has Ohio State really done much more than Georgia since 2017? Okay, since 2017, Ohio State's won the Big Ten every year. That would be the big distinction, is that Georgia's had to deal with Alabama. So they've won the SEC only once in those 4 seasons, where Ohio State's won the Big Ten all 4. But in terms of a record and competing against elite competition, Georgia's done that just as well as Ohio State. In 2017, Ohio State lost by 2 scores to Oklahoma. They lost that Iowa game. 2018, they lost to Purdue by 4 scores. They won the Rose Bowl. 2019, they played a great season, of course. They could have been in the national championship game. They lost to Clemson in a nail-biter. And then, of course, what happened this past season was Ohio State beat everyone, including Clemson. Then they lost by 4 scores in the national championship game. What's Georgia done? Well, 2017, they were arguably the best team in the country. They lost on a miraculous play in overtime in the national championship game. So Ohio State hasn't reached that level since 2017. 2018, Georgia had a 2-touchdown lead in the SEC championship game against the consensus number 1 team in the country. They blew it. They lost. And they lost the Sugar Bowl. They still finished in the top 10 in the nation. 2019, they went back to the SEC championship game. They lost. They won the Sugar Bowl. Ohio State's lost how many games since 2017? They've lost 2, 3, 4, 5. Georgia's lost 2, 5, 7. Yeah, I'll give Ohio State a slight edge over Georgia. I don't think that it's showing that Georgia's culture is terrible. All right. Mark, only one playoff appearance with that talent. Come on. Okay. I think we're smart enough to distinguish teams that play in the SEC versus teams that play in other conferences like the ACC. If Georgia was in the ACC, or if they were in the Big 12 or the Pac 12, would they be going to playoffs? And one playoff appearance since 2017, that's 1 in 4 years. Okay. Ohio State has 2 in 4 years. Oklahoma has 2 in 4 years. Okay. Oklahoma and Ohio State didn't have to play that LSU team in 2019 and Alabama teams in SEC championship games. So yeah, I'm not really seeing a huge distinction there. Oh, the Rod Favre is going back 25 years? You don't want to go back 25 years on Georgia football. You're not going to find extremely good football teams before Mark Richt. You're going to find a lot of average, above average. You're going to find a lot of fringe top 25 teams. You're going to find a lot of 8-4, 7-5 teams. Go back 25 years. We're talking 1995. I think you're going to find a 5-6 season in there in the mid 90s.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to. The call will start at the beep.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports 4. How are you doing?
McD, what's going on? I'm doing well.
You kind of look out there at the end.
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm about to upset a lot of your audience here about this college football tier thing.
Sounds like I'm about to as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's 5 tiers, in my opinion.
Okay.
And my definition on a tier is how popular and is the average college football fan, like the one that only knows maybe the big names, maybe only knows the big time schools, are going to watch you no matter what. And to me, there are 16 tier 1 schools. And those tier 1 schools are in the ACC, you got Clemson, Florida State, and Miami. In the Big 10, you got Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. In the SEC, you got Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Auburn. You got LSU, and you got Tennessee. In the Big 12, you got Texas and Oklahoma. And then in the Pac-12, you got Oregon and USC. Those 16 schools are the schools that people, I think, will watch no matter what. Oh, yeah, you always got Notre Dame in there as well, 17 schools. Those are the 17 schools, I think, no matter what, people will watch, even if they're not that good.
You are ranking and categorizing football programs based on how popular you think they are.
Yeah, I think those are tier 1 schools. They can win a championship no matter what. If they have the right coach, the right athletes, the right everything, I think they can go ahead and win a championship no matter what.
No matter what?
Yep.
Miami's been showing us over the last 20 years that they can win a national championship no matter what.
I think if Miami has the right players, the right coaches and everything, they have the resources, I think they could win a championship during any given year.
But Wisconsin doesn't.
No, I would say Wisconsin is a tiers 2 school. Based off of history.
Your ranking is more hypothetical. If everything's perfect, if everything works right, Wisconsin's outperforming half the teams that you're talking about, that you're listing.
Yeah, I know. But I don't think at the end of the day, I don't think Wisconsin would be there. If they were a tier 1 school, they would be in Ohio State a few years ago when they were undefeated in the Big 10 championship game.
Did you put Auburn in that category?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. I put Auburn in Tier 1.
Okay, that's a different way to look at it. You're really not basing it on what's been accomplished.
I'm basing it off of TV ratings and who I think would the average college football fan would sit down and watch, no matter what.
You've been tracking those Tennessee TV ratings over the last 5 years, have you?
A lot of people watch Tennessee.
Well, I'm not saying that they don't. I'm not necessarily saying that that I can vouch for Tennessee's TV ratings. I don't know that they're necessarily moving the needle.
I mean, if you ask someone, name a college football team that knows nothing about college football, I think they would name one of the 17 schools that I mentioned. I don't think they would name any other school. You just actually name a random college football team.
Did you put Texas A&M in that category?
I wouldn't name Texas A&M. I think they're a Tier 2 school.
Okay.
It's not, to me, it's not based off of what you're doing right now. It's based off of your whole history. It goes back to the Blue Blood program. So I guess there's 17 Blue Bloods. I don't like that term, Blue Bloods, but I think if to be a Tier 1 school, you gotta be I think if you're a Blue Blood, you're in the Tier 1 no matter what. And a lot of people are saying Michigan is in a Tier 2 school. They are a Blue Blood, and I think they're a Tier 1 school based off of that alone.
Did you put Oregon in there?
Yep.
Did you put Washington in there?
No, I think Washington just misses out.
Okay.
I think Washington's probably the best Tier 2 school. Them or Wisconsin. Probably Wisconsin, but Washington's probably number 2.
All right. Let me see if I got a handle on this. I've been trying to let this sink in and get a grasp on this. You're basically telling us that there are 17 schools in the country that have the brand name, the image, the history, the prestige, the resources, the money, the recruiting, everything to win a national championship.
Yep.
That I can agree with.
That's, to me, what classifies as a Tier 1 school.
Okay, you're looking at it differently, but there's nothing wrong with that. Based on your definition, I will agree with you. I do not see any school outside of those 17 winning a national championship. Ever.
Yeah, I just don't. Not ever.
Well,
but
yeah, things can change, of course, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
The way things stand right now.
Yeah, I think usually those 17 schools, more likely than not, are usually the favorites to win the championship every year. Outside maybe Tennessee over the past 20 years.
Now, the closest we've seen outside of that, well, consistently would be Wisconsin. They win consistently.
Yeah, Wisconsin's the only one that I think you can make an argument for. Nebraska's another one as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they have the resources as much as they might have had back in the 90s.
They don't have the recruiting.
Yeah,
I think they have the resources. They got money. They've got facilities. I think the other 3 schools that we've seen, they don't win as consistently as Wisconsin. Wisconsin's never threatened to win a national championship, but they just win consistently. They just win 10 games and go to major bowl games and finish in the top 15. The 3 that have taken a shot at being elite in the last 10 years would be Washington, Stanford, and Michigan State.
I would not say Michigan is a Tier 2 school. I think they're one of the best Tier 2 schools.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying that there was a 5-year, 6-year run there where they were almost the top 5 team in the country on the field.
That's true.
Now that's passed them by. It's gone.
I think we had the conversation earlier that Michigan State's usually a 66 program.
Sure.
That's 2-3. I mean, I know I'm looking at it differently. I'm just looking at do they have all the things to go ahead and win a championship? I think those 17 schools have it. I think they can recruit. I think they can. I think they have the resources, and I think they're enough of a attractive job that you can really hire anybody.
Okay. I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm looking at it more from who's been performing the best and who's performing at those different tier levels. And some of those schools obviously haven't been. But if you look at it more forward thinking like you are to say who's capable of doing it, how about North Carolina?
Tier 2.
All right.
I would say North Carolina Tier 2.
All right, McD,
But, I mean,
anything else?
I look at it differently. So.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair way to look at it. I think there's value in it. Anything else?
No, I just wanted to just give my 2 cents on it.
No, I like it. Thanks, McD. Have a good one.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty valid. You can look at it that way to say, okay, even though Wisconsin's been better than Texas over the last 10 years, they're not winning a national championship. They just don't have it. They don't have the recruiting footprint. They don't attract that level of athlete, where Texas, even though they haven't come anywhere close to winning consistently like a Wisconsin, they do have it. They just haven't harnessed it for the last 10 years. Yeah, David, I may take it on to rank to just rank them instead of trying to put them in categories. To just rank them instead of trying to make a differentiation between, okay, these are the 3 at the top, and then there's 2 more, and then there's 8 more, and then there's a dividing line, and you got to recategorize that just to say that Georgia is better than Oklahoma, or I may tackle this just in terms of a 1 through 66 ranking. With the understanding that take your pick, take your team. Cincinnati, the Cincinnati of the last 3 years, the Boise State of most of the last 20 years is better. They just play better football than teams in the Power 5. Many teams. But to try to mix them in is difficult to do. Because regardless of how good Cincinnati is, they're not playing the schedule that Illinois is playing. Year after year after year after year. John says, I think we could argue about Tier 1 being 3 or 4 teams. Then Tier 2 gets really big, includes 2 or 3. And there's something to be said about what John's doing there, which is he's got broader tiers. Some of us become more minute and really splice hairs and really differentiate tiers, as opposed to some people are more just, we got a group of 8, we got a group of 20. And as it would go down the line, it would become more difficult to differentiate and build the tiers. The tiers would really broaden. Web Security says Georgia, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, LSU Tier 2. Okay. The Rod Farva said the same thing I did. Texas A&M needs to show us more. They were a 5-loss team the entire time Kevin Sumlin was there, except for the one Johnny Manziel year. Okay. They have the big Johnny Manziel year. His second year wasn't quite as good, 9-4, but still, roughly top 15. And then Kevin Sumlin's 8-5, 8-5, 8-5, 8-5, which is that's top 25-ish. And then they bring in Jimbo, and everything's pointing in the right direction. But except for this nice little 10-game sample we have, there was a lot of marginal wins against the likes of Arkansas and Mississippi State and Vandy. I want to see that team perform against Alabama again next year. And sure, Alabama might be a whole different animal again next year, but I want to see them against an LSU team that I expect to be much improved, in Auburn, and whomever they play in the East and through the entire season. James is saying, how many states can say they had two top-flight quarterbacks right down the street from Athens to spit on the state university and walk away? I guess that would be one. I guess one state can say that because I don't know of any other states that have a city called Athens. Do we have any other Athens out there? So I guess it would be the one state that can say that. I don't know how many schools, how many football programs have multiple five-star quarterbacks, even after one's leaving, either by graduation or defection, leaving, that they still have multiple five-star quarterbacks in the quarterback room, like Kirby Smart and Georgia. David Knight says the Alabama loss against Clemson 2 years ago by 4 touchdowns in the national championship game says that they're not on a tier by themselves. And that's fair, David. Okay, because I'm going to extend your point. That's fair. So Alabama so I'm going to throw Reasonable Gump's comments back at him, understanding that this is so complex and complicated, we're all going to contradict ourselves at some point. So I'm not immune to doing that as well in trying to work through this. Because at one point, Reasonable Gump said Alabama's in a class by themselves, which that's not a crazy statement to make after what we saw this season. But at the same time, we're not focusing on 1 year, this just being a 2021 or 2020 ranking, rating, tier system. Well, Alabama, to David Knight's point, 2 years ago, lost the national championship game by 4 touchdowns. How could they be elevated that far beyond Clemson and Ohio State, Clemson in particular, because of that? And secondly, Alabama's only 1 year removed from having a really good team, but they lost 2 games, and they didn't make the playoff. They didn't make a New Year's Six bowl game. They were good. They were really good. I think they were the 4th best team in the country. But they finished number 8, and they went 11-2, and they lost to LSU and Auburn. So it's not like Alabama separated themselves because we're looking at 3 consecutive national championships, and 2 of those teams were undefeated, and they've only lost 1 game in 3 years or whatever. Well, they did what they did this year, but prior to that, it was 11-2, top 10. It was undefeated until they got smoked in a national championship game. And then it was a national title before that, but it was a national title loss before that. And it was a national title before that in 2015. Although the further I went back, the more I substantiated Alabama possibly being in a class by itself, because Clemson and Ohio State aren't quite living up to that, where it's basically a national championship game almost every year. 2015, 16, 17, 18, 20. So then again, I swing back toward the case of Alabama being in a class by itself. Man, when you go to the national championship game all those years in a row, we want to take it all the way back. Well, let's not do that. Let's stay with 2015. 15, 16, 17, 18, 20. 15 through 20 is 6 seasons, 5 of 6 seasons. playing in the championship game and either winning, losing close once, getting smoked. So in those 6 seasons, winning the title 3 times, losing excruciatingly close once, getting smoked once, not making it once. That's pretty high territory. Matthew, hey Mark, is this historical or current? This is current. This is current right now. This is not Army and Yale and Harvard. This is current. So there you go. I thought David made a great point, and he did. I sided with him in thinking, okay, how can a team have a tier to itself when it lost by 4 scores to another team that is supposed to be in the same tier, or they're supposed to be elevated above, and then the next year they didn't even get to the playoff. But then the more I extended that point, the more it kind of leaned me toward Alabama being on its own tier. This is not easy stuff. And then how far do you go back? You know, some people are bringing up right now. Some people go back a couple years. We've had people bring up the last decade. Certainly a lot of these programs, if you go back a decade, that's 2010, 2011. It depends on the program. Some of these programs are so much different. They're just a different program today than they were 10 years ago. Ohio State's the same program. From the time Urban Meyer took over on through Ryan Day, same program. Georgia's a different program. Their status isn't much different, but just different leadership. 2010, 2011. Florida State's much different, of course. We touched on that. Penn State's been through a couple roller coaster rides since then. SEC dog. Mark going to make Luke Walker lose his mind. Iowa better than North Carolina. Iowa has been better than North Carolina. Are they better right this second on the field? I'm not saying that. Maybe they are. I'm not saying North Carolina's better. I think that's a close call. That'd be a great game. I'd love to see that game tomorrow. Iowa and North Carolina. But Iowa's been better. That's not even debatable. Iowa's been better than North Carolina the last 5 years. It's not even close. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Dominic. How you doing?
Dominic! What's going on?
Not that much, really. Sorry I missed your Super Bowl call-in show last night. I was busy.
No need to apologize.
Yeah, I know. But I'm honestly, at this point, so for my tier, I would probably put Ohio State somewhere around the middle, in my opinion. But at this point, I think Alabama did pretty well last season. Do you think Devontae Smith will be at the Dolphins?
Whoa. Okay, you took me all over the place. You said Ohio State somewhere in the middle? The middle of what? The middle of the country? Close.
Close.
They're close to the middle of the country. Iowa's actually, there's a point in Iowa. We learned this during the Super Bowl last night. If you saw the Bruce Springsteen commercial, there's a town called Center, I think it's called Center Square, Iowa. That's the exact middle of the country. So Ohio's actually far east of that, but they're close to the middle of the country. But you said Ohio State's in the middle. The middle of what?
Well, I saw your title
Yep.
of the stream, but I'm not sure what the title meant. I'm not too sure.
Basically, that people like to rate college football teams and put them in tiers. Like this is tier 1, this is tier 2, and then make a definition as to why these teams are tier 1 and these teams are tier 2 and tier 3 and on down the line.
Oh, okay. Well, if I was to do that, for tier 1, I'd probably put which team? Probably Alabama at the top of my tier 1 list.
Okay.
And second, probably Ohio State, since they did pretty well last season, but they got hammered in the national title game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one, I have to ask you something before I go. Where do you think Devontae Smith will end up in the NFL draft?
Well, I'm not a big NFL draft guy. I don't even know what the order of the draft is, or who's looking for wide receivers, or who's just going to take the best player off the board. But I would think he's going to be a top 15 pick, right?
Yeah, I think that as well. But yeah, I think he'll be a top 15 pick. But I'm going to let you go now. Thank you for taking my call, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dominic. All right. Got some breakdown there from Dominic. Devontae Smith, I don't know. I don't know what the NFL draft, I don't know who's looking at him. I don't know what the needs of the teams are. Yeah, I don't know what the mock. The best way to do that is just search a mock draft, and you'll find about 47 of them, and you just see where those projections are. And about 42 of the 47 are going to be wrong. And Pixie and Pete and I were talking about that today in terms of these mock drafts, even the great ones, even McShay and Kuiper. Somebody needs to go through all their final mock drafts before each draft each year and then have a breakdown of how many players they had going to the right teams. I guarantee it's not even anywhere close to 50%. It's not even close to 50%. No. So I don't even know why people do mock drafts. I want to see somebody hit 50%. I am 30-12 in picking the Super Bowl. We learned that last night. 30-12 against the spread as well. There's an Athens, Alabama. Thank you, Matthew. I figured there was another Athens out there somewhere besides the original. Athens, Arkansas. Okay. The way too early, top 25. Got to work on that. Got that started. Tomorrow morning, bright and early, put this on the to-do list. Check out our video series that's starting tomorrow where we're fixing college football scheduling. We got the fix for college football scheduling. We're going to attack all the conferences first and then the non-conference schedule. The scheduling is awful. It's horrible. Athens, Kentucky. Mike 3883, which teams have the biggest difference with their tier of this decade compared to their overall tier? Texas, USC on the high end. On the high end all time, that's tumbled. On the low end, and Florida State in the last 5 years. Again, I stated this maybe a half hour ago. The Florida State's taken a bigger nosedive than any program in college football by far in the last 5 years. It's not even close. The historically bad programs that are better than they typically are and have been for decades. Northwestern. Has anybody been around since the 80s, 70s, 80s, early 90s? Northwestern. Northwestern was Rutgers. Northwestern was Kansas. They were probably worse. Northwestern. Way above their all-time status. Stanford. Now, Stanford's had a couple marginal to lousy seasons. They went 4-8 last year. This past season, I think they were 4-2. Again, the Pac-12 played so few games, I don't even know if it's worth stating what the team's records were. But so Stanford, from the time that Harbaugh built the program through 2018-ish, 2018, Stanford's been anywhere from top 5 to top 20, 25. Over the course of that 10 years, Stanford's been a top 10 to 15 program team. And their all-time rank is not. Stanford's been bad forever. Stanford's been good under Bill Walsh in the early 70s for a short period of time. In the early 70s, Jim Plunkett, when this is how bad Stanford is. Stanford could not get to a bowl game when John Elway was there. John Elway went under 500 at Stanford. Stanford, awful. With a few little high points in football up until Harbaugh in 2009-10, Andrew Luck. Now, quarterback play at Stanford, they've shown us a few quarterbacks. Elway and Plunkett, of course. Luck. Trying to think if there was another. Kevin Hogan made the NFL, but not talking about just making the NFL. Is there anybody else in there? I think I'm missing somebody. Nebraska. There's your school in the Texas USC category. Nebraska. All-time great. Especially since the early 70s, the late 60s, early 70s. Nebraska could argue that they've got the greatest football program in the country from 1970 to 2000. If you just took that block, that 40 years, Nebraska could argue that they're the best. Number one. But they haven't won a conference in almost 20 years. They're floundering in the Big Ten. Mark Kessling, Ohio State has had 8 losses since 2015. They lost 1 that year. They lost 2 in 16. They lost 2 in 17, 1 in 18, 1 in 19, 1 in 20. Alabama since 15 has lost 1 in 15, 1 in 16, 1 in 17, 1 in 18, 2 in 19. They've lost 6. Clemson has lost 1 in 15, 1 in 16, 2 in 17, none in 18, 1 in 19, 2 in 27. Thank you, Ben, my boy. Smash the like button. If you like what we do here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, even if you don't agree with me. If you like what we do in delivering a discussion debate on a regular basis, analysis as we do, please hit the like button. Of course, I would ask that you would consider contributing here We will continue this channel and other channels based on your individual contributions and based on sponsorships. I've got to carve some time out this week to get after some of this stuff. Producing too much content. Got to back it off on the content. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. So I think that FSU is a joke now. Pretty much. They are. They are. They play in the great state of Florida with all that talent, so there's always hope. And they just brought in a top 27 class, something in that range. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Reagan.
Hey, Reagan. What's up?
Hey, I haven't called in a while, but here I am. And so I'm gonna start off with how do you think Florida will, of course, Kyle Trask is leaving next year, and we're probably gonna have Emory Jones as Florida's starting quarterback, possibly Anthony Richardson. But how do you think they'll perform next year? Do you think they'll underperform, or how do you think they'll do?
I think Florida's, I think Florida basically is going to have a transition year in which they're going to be strong. They're going to be capable. They should hang on to second place in the East, but they've got a difficult schedule. Alabama comes to town in week 3. I think that Dan Mullen's the guy to groom a quarterback and develop a quarterback into a good player, and Emory Jones has a lot to learn and a lot to develop in terms of passing. Of course, they go from being heavy in the passing game and drop back passing to opening up the playbook for a guy that can create with his legs, but they're really going to have to put the tight reins on what he can do in the passing game. They need to become more balanced in the run game, and Emory Jones is going to help them do that from the quarterback spot, but also from the running back spot. They've got a nice complement of running backs. I like their running back room, and of course, DeMarcus Bowman adds to that. I think their offense is going to be more balanced and not nearly as explosive. Eric Gilbert, a tight end, was certainly a great find after losing Kyle Pitts. He's got big shoes to fill to show that he's as good as Kyle Pitts, but he's certainly a capable backup. He caught 35 passes as a freshman at LSU. It was an interesting move to retain Todd Grantham as defensive coordinator, considering what we saw out of the Florida defense. But, I think without staring at the schedule, that they're probably looking at it an 8-4 season.
Okay. Well, and you did say that you expect Florida to hold on to the number 2 spot. I'm guessing to Georgia at number 1. But how do you think Georgia will perform next year? Because they are a team that, from what I've seen, is expected to go into next season and play really well. So how do you think they'll do next year? Well,
for Georgia, it's win it all or bust. They need to win the SEC. They need to. They've got this enormous game on opening night against Clemson. As long as they don't get blown out, that's not going to hurt them one way or the other. If they lose a close game, that's not going to hurt their playoff chances. As long as Clemson is what we expect Clemson to be, I don't think the committee's going to look at that game if the loser's within a 1-score situation. But Georgia had more guys come back, as you probably know, than they anticipated that turned down the NFL and decided to come back for another year. So they were pleased with the guys that they had coming back. Of course, they have one of the best recruiting classes in the country again, and a ton of those guys will be early enrollees to be able to get them off and running. And we'll get to see JT Daniels after having a full, something that nobody was able to have this past off season. We hope that he'll have a full spring practice, summer drills, individual drills, and workouts, and then right into a full August camp as the starter. And so you would think that if their quarterback coach and offensive coordinator know what they're doing, then they should be much improved.
My last question is going to be, I have some of your videos about Todd Grantham, but do you think it was a smart move? Because Florida has been known for their great defense until this year, and we're not sure about next year, but do you think it was a smart move to keep Todd Grantham?
Well, I'm not close enough to the situation to say for sure, but based on where I stand and based on what I watched and everything I know from listening to capable Florida people that we have on here, I don't think they should have retained him. I would have gotten rid of him.
Yeah, I don't think it was the smartest move, but like I said, we've seen Florida's defense perform great until this year. But that's all I got today. Thank you.
Thanks, Reagan. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Let's see if we've got some folks on the line. Got 61 on the line. Want to remind everyone that we released a live stream schedule that we will do our best to adhere to and stick with and stay on for the rest of the off season, which includes call-in shows Monday night at 6 right here, Tuesday night at 6 on the Ohio State channel, Wednesday night at 8 call-in show right here, Thursday night at 6 on the SEC channel, and Friday night at 6 right here. All right. Then also, we've got our noon shows, Monday with Pixie and Pete, Tuesday right here at noon Eastern time. And then, of course, we still have our team-specific shows that we've got Ohio State at 2 o'clock on Wednesday and Florida State at 6, and the Miami show has to float. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Michael. How you doing tonight?
Hey, Michael. I'm doing well. What's going on?
Hey, I got a question. You guys just talked. I caught you guys halfway through. For some reason, I'm not even getting my notification when you come in live no more. I usually, when I type in YouTube, it's there. I don't know what's going on. But what is this tier system everybody you guys been talking about for most of the show?
So basically what I addressed and just tabled as a topic tonight would be, I saw an article on ESPN about a week ago where all 130 teams by this particular ESPN writer were tiered, put into tiers 1 through 10. And so I was just asking everyone as a topic of conversation to list what they felt would be the tier structure in college football. So that's what we're kicking around.
And another thing I'm saying, I just had curiosity, what would Purdue be on tier 10, which is the most pathetic?
Well, Purdue, right now, Purdue, I would almost have to think about the Big Ten first. And, wow, the tiers roughly in the Big Ten right now are Ohio State by themselves, and then Penn State, Michigan, Iowa, Wisconsin, Northwestern on a tier, and then maybe Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State are on a tier. And I know Indiana had a great year this past year, but I'm not just going to go crazy off one year. And then I think based on the way Rutgers played pretty well, and Illinois not so much. Maybe Rutgers and Illinois are still at the bottom, and Purdue's in some type of a second to last tier with Maryland and a couple others, somewhere in that range.
Oh, okay. Another thing, it's kind of hard. I was looking at the poll cities. How hard is it to believe that Kansas, Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, UCLA, and Michigan State is not ranked in the AP top 25 for basketball?
Wow.
Not that cheap.
Yeah, that's crazy.
One last thing, and I don't know, I'm sure you heard about it, but what was your, I'm sure you might have worked with him, but what was your take that you'll never forget about Pedro Gomez?
Oh, yeah, that was really sad to see that. My goodness, that was incredibly sad. So I'll let everyone know that Michael's alluding to the passing away of Pedro Gomez, I believe at the age of 58. Tremendous ESPN baseball reporter who primarily worked as he was working his way up. And I don't want to state it that way, but his first portion of his tenure at ESPN, and I state this because for anyone who knows, I was at ESPN for 19 years. And so we all just think of ESPN and the main network, but there are 19 to 20 networks around the world. So I also worked on the operations for international networks, and I would see Pedro Gomez on Sunday Night Baseball and other baseball games on ESPN Deportes. And before he started to get some more assignments domestically on the main network. Yeah, I never met him, but certainly I read a ton of comments on Twitter today about him. And the guy that you saw on the air was apparently the same guy that that was a friend of many people off the air. Is just a very positive, upbeat man, very kind, gentleman who just loved his craft and loved the game of baseball and his family and friends. So that was very, very sad to see.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, and I know you did college football stuff too, but didn't you do some college football games too?
I'm not aware of that.
No, I'm asking because I wasn't sure. I thought he might have stuff when he first started got to ESPN. I know he did a lot of stuff with the coaches. I was just wondering. So.
That I'm not sure of. I haven't seen him do college football.
Okay, I was just wondering. All right, then, sir. Thanks for your time. Have a great night.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah. Life is short. Life is short. And each day that we all are able to wake up and stretch and get out of bed and proceed with our day is always a blessing. So we'll never know each and every day who we're going to find out who has left us on this planet. Of course, that goes without saying that it's multiples of thousands of millions of people that lose their lives every day in this country and around the world. Most of them are not in a sense notable because people know who they are. Of course, I'm of the belief that every individual life has the same value, regardless of how famous anybody is. That doesn't matter, that we all have the same value. Joe Tilson, Bob Devaney, Tom Osborne made Nebraska great from the 60s to 1998. Absolutely. Michael, we appreciate you bringing that up about Pedro Gomez, so we could give him proper tribute and recognition. Joel is pointing out that it was both the walk-on program and the strength and conditioning program that was the key for Nebraska's success. They were so far ahead of everyone else there in terms of making them a Big 8 power and a top 5 program in the nation. Now, Tom Osborne's adaptability and his awareness to change the offense and recruit more Florida players, get some speed, and develop the passing game, not into some high-flying circus, but just enough to where they were capable throwing the ball really vaulted them from a team. If you look in the late 80s, right around the time that Miami emerged, Nebraska played them in 2 Orange Bowls, not the famous one that ushered in the Miami dynasty, but 2 Orange Bowls after that in, I believe, 88 and 89, which they lost 22-0 and 23-3. Their offense just couldn't. Now, if you look at the score for Miami, that meant Nebraska could hang defensively. Miami didn't, with all that Miami speed and talent offensively, and those NFL quarterbacks couldn't just run away from Nebraska. But Nebraska offensively could do nothing against Miami. Even aside from the Miami losses, just could not compete nationally. It's almost like taking Oklahoma right now or Notre Dame right now. But they got some key talent out of Florida. They added some speed. They stayed with their core values and what they did from a strength and conditioning standpoint and running the football and believing in offensive line play and fullback and all that. They stayed there, but they added the passing element just enough. Again, they went from throwing 5 passes a game to throwing 15 or 18 passes a game, just enough to loosen the defense, get some big chunk plays in the offense, and then they should have broken through in the 93 Orange Bowl against Florida State, losing to Bobby Bowden in Bowden's national championship season, his first in 93, in which Notre Dame actually won the national championship. I don't understand. We won't go into that. But Bowden won 18-16. Nebraska missed a long field goal at the gun. That was an excruciating loss for Tom Osborne because he brought them so far, and they still lost the national championship game. But then they came back the next year and beat Miami by a touchdown at the Orange Bowl. And also a bit of a disadvantage that Nebraska was, quote unquote, technically hosting the Orange Bowl all those times, but they would have to play, as they did 4 different times, Miami in Miami's home stadium, Nebraska being the quote unquote home team. Kind of silly. Sanctopotamus, Mark, let's don't be totally stupid. College football has to be 14 or more in the playoff. Well, let's not be 14. It can't be 14. You know why? I don't know how many times I'll need to say this. No buys. No buys. All right, I think we've made ourselves available for a good period of time tonight for our first appearance since we released our new schedule. Again, we're here Monday at 6, Wednesday at 8, Friday at 6. Call-in shows here. Okay? Then college football coast to coast with Pigskin Pete Monday at noon. Tuesday at noon here. And then we've got an SEC show that we're going to do Thursday night on the SEC channel, Thursday night at 6. Ohio State here tomorrow night. When I say here, I mean at the Ohio State channel. And then we've got our Buckeyes live and Seminoles live and Hurricanes live shows. Too much for you to take in by me just running it down verbally. So grab the schedule that I left in the community section. Maybe I'll cut a video and run it down. And we'll try to stay with this, and hopefully you can build a solid audience with all of you. And let's get these sponsored. I'm looking in the mirror when I say that because I got to do that. I'm actually in a sense, looking in the mirror because I can see my return. I'm the most responsible for this, of course, in building this channel, the Voice of College Football. So I need to get a sponsor for these call-in shows. But if you have any lead on a sponsor, whether you own a business, you specifically, and don't think, well, I own this business and Mark these are generally the numbers he pulls in, that you're going to have to break the bank or anything. It will be reasonable, and it will make sense, and it will make sense based on the research that I've done through YouTube to understand what is the value of our platform. So if you have a business that could benefit, of course, this is a worldwide industry. This is a worldwide telecast. But then also keep in mind this. Think of it this way. If you want to reach a certain audience, Nebraska fans, Florida State fans, let's say your business is in Athens, Georgia fans, then you can just sponsor Georgia content, Georgia live streams. Think of it that way as well. Right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Send your request to MarkRogersTV at Gmail. More importantly, you've got a sponsor lead. Send it to MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. That's where you can contribute as well. We've got a final call of the night. Here we go. Let's make it a good one. Again, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App are available for you to contribute individually as well. Yeah, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's 28 AD.
Hey, what's going on?
Not a whole lot. How are you tonight?
I'm good.
Good. Hey, man, I just wanted to say that before I ask my question, I just wanted to say I got a chance to see your video with the reactioneer the other night.
Yes.
I thought that was pretty cool. I haven't checked out the channel yet, but I definitely will.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, but it certainly hit home with me, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's good to know you're an Elvis fan, too. Didn't know that.
Oh, you bet. You bet I am. You want to get me riled up arguing about something, that would be the that would be the subject.
Okay, so here we are. So let me ask you this.
Yep.
Elvis or Ohio State, who would you be more dedicated to?
Oh, that's not even close.
Really?
It's not even close. No.
So you throw the Buckeyes under the bus for Elvis?
Well, if you asked me that throughout my life, that would have taken me a lot longer to make a decision. But the older I get, the less attached to my teams I am, especially since I'm doing this, and especially since you just realize, okay, it's what's the famous line that Jerry Seinfeld said? You're basically rooting for laundry. Comment, which I don't totally buy into that, but there is some truth to that as well. Especially, now the unfortunate thing at the collegiate level is the one strong attachment I had to college football and college athletics in general, but I love football more than the other sports by far, is that you could always say, Adrian Peterson's a Sooner, will always be a Sooner. He's an Oklahoma player, and regardless of where he goes in the NFL, Vikings, Redskins, on and on, all over the place, he can go wherever he wants. He's always going to be a Sooner. Well, with this crazy transfer portal, we're not going to have players where we're going to say, this guy was always an LSU Tiger. That's all he was. He was always true to his school, and that's the only place he ever played. Well, that's evaporating.
Right.
I hate to see that go.
Yeah, I hate to see that go too. It's even with coaches, Mark. I think it's sort of like that. I know one of the things I've always loved about OU is that Barry Switzer was a coach only at Oklahoma in terms of being a collegiate coach, and Bob Stoops spent all his years at Oklahoma. Bud Wilkinson spent all his years coaching Division I ball at Oklahoma. And we had another coach that won 100 games at Oklahoma, too, guy by the name of Benny Owen. Stadium, the field's named after him, Owen Field. He also coached, his only Division I job was Oklahoma. All four of those coaches won 100 games or more at OU. But there's no other school that can claim, well, he won for us, too. Switzer's just a Sooner. And Stoops, while he's a DC at Florida, but as a head man, he's just a Sooner. I'm hoping Riley doesn't ever take another job. I just want him to be a Sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Just to hang on to that kind of thing. I don't want my coach to, another fan base will say, well, yeah, he won for us too. But my question tonight, Mark, was concerning the tiers. What's the criteria we're using to determine what the tiers are?
Well, that's something that I stated out of the gate, that that would have to be determined by that individual. And if I produce a video, then I'm going to have to define what the tiers mean to me and what they should be. And the more I think about it, the more difficult it becomes, where I think I'm just going to be ranking these programs 1 to 66 is what I'm going to end up doing. Because to have a cutoff of a tier is difficult to do. And then I don't know how much of the discussion you've heard, but in terms of the relevance of the past, how far you go, you can't have a dividing line and just say suddenly anything previous to 2014 is irrelevant and everything since then it gets totally counted. It's almost like to me at least, I'm not saying this is a rule, but to me there's a descending weight given to the past. The more recent it is, the more important it is, because I'm not, the question was not, or the topic, not all time tiers, it's right now. And so we only have the past to go on, but I would think the further in the past, then it becomes less valued or gives less weight.
Okay.
So
what do you think over the playoff era?
So if we take the playoff era?
Yes.
Well, I think there's a tier 1 with 3 schools. And then I think there's a tier 2 with 2 schools. And so that's Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and that's Oklahoma and Georgia. And I'm not quite ready, if we take that entire block of time into account, ready to put Notre Dame on the tier with Oklahoma and Georgia. Because they had a 4-8 season in 2016. And they weren't anywhere close to a playoff in 14 and 15. Well, they were in 15, actually. But anyway, the other two have been decidedly better. But Penn State, Michigan, this is where it gets difficult, because everybody else I'm starting to consider has high highs and low lows. Like Florida State, for the first part of that playoff era, for the first 3 years, they're like a second-tier team, but they've been a tier infinity team the last 5 years. They've been awful. They are the program that has fallen off the cliff more than any other program in the last 5 years. Correct?
Yeah, that's an interesting question too. I mean, what caused that? How did they go from being in a national championship game and winning a national championship to the next year being unbeaten and losing to Oregon in the playoff, to then all of a sudden just we're a 5-win team, we're a 4-win team, we're struggling at home against group of 5 schools and getting beat by.
Yeah.
How did that happen and so quickly?
Well,
there was no probation.
Yeah.
There wasn't a probation that happened in there. So what happened?
Well, they had 2 more years after that where they were a top 10 team, 15 and 16. And then they fell off the rails, and the most obvious change in the program was they lost their coach and didn't replace him. But there was an article that I thought was pretty brilliant on ESPN maybe 2 months ago, talking about the Florida State slide and all the factors involved. And unless we come up with more timely news, I'm going to serve that up to our Florida State panel Wednesday night, and we're going to sift through this article. It may take us 4 weeks to get through it, because it's pretty in depth, and I'm sure we'll all have something to say about whether it's accurate or not.
Yeah, between them and Texas, I think have been the 2 programs I think that sort of plummeted almost suddenly in a way.
Yes. Yep.
And Texas, I think, started their slide at the end of the Mac Brown era. He started to slide off, and I think the program started to slide, and then they tried to they brought in Strong, and he couldn't get it done. And then they brought in Herman. He couldn't pull them back to where they needed to be. But I think Strong gets a little bit of a bad rep just because I don't think he ever really had the support of the people there. And the program was actually already on a downhill slide when he got there. That's sort of how he got the job in the first place, because they were already failing. That's why Mac Brown left. But yeah, it's interesting to see programs when and again, no probation there. You know, before you could explain some of those things away when teams would get hit with sanctions, and you could see, oh, okay, they got dinged here, and then their program went into the can. But these places that haven't had a major scandal or haven't really had a big, major downfall like that, and you still managed to plummet like that.
Yep. Yeah. Well,
Okay, Mark. Well, I just wanted to check with you about the tiers to see what your criteria was, and we'll keep listening to the show, and I'll check out the reaction here soon. I'm very curious to watch some of his reactions to some of the videos and things.
yeah, I don't know what music you're into, but I think he's got a pretty wide variety there. Again, I've got a nature that's very, well, I hate to say this, obsessive compulsive. I don't know if that's the right category I'm going to put myself in. I'm very, very narrow-minded in certain categories of entertainment and interest and that sort of thing. So I don't know what his reactions are to all this other music, but he does do a wide variety of other genres and other categories of music. Yeah. So.
Sure. Yeah, I did hear him say that he didn't have any Beatles on there, though, which I've got to say is a slight strike, because I'm a big Beatles guy.
Well, did you hear the reason why he didn't touch the Beatles?
Did he say because he heard it all before? Or
yeah, I think I take from that he's a huge Beatles fan, and he just knows the music too well.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of hard to react to something when you've already been exposed to it so often.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, then, Mark, we'll pop back in on you soon.
Absolutely.
Have a good rest of the evening.
Yeah, you too. Call anytime. We'll see you.
All right. Thanks.
All right. I think we had one other call coming in here that we could possibly get to. And Shanksopotamus had an interesting... There it is. There it is. I don't know what he's talking about right there. Yeah. Mark does not work for ESPN for a reason. Yeah, the reason was I left. All right. Appreciate everybody calling, commenting in the live chat. And again, please support us in any way that you feel moved. Comment, like, share the videos on social media. Share the videos on social media. So think of it this way. If you like what we do here, if you like the discussion, if you like the debate, the analysis, if you like the videos, whatever you like about it, if you like it, then other people will too. And most likely those people that follow you and are connected to you on social media, Facebook, Twitter, don't know we're here. They don't know. And so they can join the conversation as well if you let them know about us. So share the videos on social media. Thank you so much for doing that. We will see you back here Tuesday at noon. That's only in about 16 hours. Tuesday at noon. We'll see you then. Just a clarification, Matthew. When you look at the watching versus the likes, understand that just because 59 people are watching right this second, and there are 61 likes, that there's been maybe 400 to 500 people watching at some point in the last 2 hours. So it's not crazy that there's 61 likes when there's been 400 or 500 people watching. So that's just the number of people watching right this second. All right. Good stuff. And thank you, Mike 3883. Appreciate all of that. All right. See everyone Tuesday at noon Eastern time.